All right, everybody, it's that time again. It is time for the TXR Podcast. And boy, was this week a little bit of a hot one. And I am not talking about the insane temperatures I am going through at Arizona, because it has been like literally 15 days straight of temperatures over 110. It has been hot, hot in the Microsoft Activision deal news. I mean, we have seen a lot of stuff take place recently. But before we jump into it all, let's please just get a good warm welcome for all our amazing TXR panel members. Starting off with Mr. Crusader. How have you been, good sir? And what have you been playing?
I'm good. I've been pretty good. I was in Philadelphia all weekend. It was Phillies game, Philly Zoo. It was great. I have been playing Greg Tech New Horizons for the last few weeks with a group of friends on a server that we're hosting. That is it's one of the longest running and like hardest modded Minecraft expert packs that exists. So it's basically like a mod pack, so a grouping of mods, and they all are additionally modded on top of that to work together in like a true form of progression. And that's what I've been playing.
What game is it called?
It's Minecraft, but it's a pack for Minecraft called Greg Tech New Horizons.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, that's just how insane modding is just like you could literally craft a completely different game off of the bones of the original game, which
And
kind of makes modding really interesting to watch.
This pack has been in development for 8 years. And they're still developing new stuff for it because it's like it's a grouping of mods, but then they also backport mods from other versions of Minecraft, and then they edit all the recipes so there's a clear progression system. And it's like you have to do this in order to get this resource, and you have to go to this dimension. So we're working on building a rocket to go to Mars. Is our next path in the game. Because
Can you actually make it to Mars?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we need to build a tier 2 rocket that lets us go to Mars and its 2 moons, Deimos and Phobos. There's a whole bunch of tiers of planets and things you have to go to, and then there's a whole bunch of magical dimensions you have to go to, and it's a really cool, really, really long, really, really grindy pack. But we're playing it with a group of 5 of us.
Sounds very interesting. Definitely a different world when it comes to gaming, especially on PC, when it comes to the concept of modding. It's like, it's a whole new world.
So great. It's my favorite.
So moving on to our next panel member, Mr. GeneralMLD. How have you been, good sir? What have you been playing, and what have you been doing, good sir, other than poking at people on social media with a big green sharp stick?
Well, I mean, it's a good pastime to poke people with a stick. So, but yeah, no, doing pretty good. Yeah, it's been a great week, gaming wise. But actually, I got rid of a couple backlog items that just were long overdue. I played the Ori series, Blind Forest, and just recently finished the Will of the Wisps. Man, are those two good games! Like especially Will of the Wisps. It's like that rare situation where the sequel is better in every way than the original and just builds on it. So yeah, nothing but good things to say. Amazing Metroidvania kind of style. So yeah, that's me. Looking forward to hopefully, well, we'll talk about it, but hopefully the Activision catalog will drop, hopefully sooner rather than later. But yeah, looking forward to tonight's chat.
Definitely, for sure. Yeah, it's going to be a great discussion tonight, especially on what the future holds for us all, not only as Xbox enthusiasts, but as enthusiasts of gaming as a whole, because there's going to be some good stuff that comes out of all this. And that's where, I mean, it's going to be good for everybody involved that puts a controller or any kind of a gaming interface in their hand. Moving on to our next member of the panel, Mr. Shockley. How have you been, good sir? What you've been playing? What you've been doing?
Oh, hey, yep. It's good to be here, especially after we got the good news that broke, and then the more good news over the weekend. And hopefully we'll find out some more tomorrow. But nope, not much. Been working on my transmission was going bad in my car. If anyone's ever had a Ford Focus from the 20 teens, they got transmission issues. So, but I fixed it. I just had to scrape off paint on the ground cable. So that's cool because I guess the connection, the thick paint they put inside your under your hood is enough to throw off the connectivity to the ground cable, which throws off the whole manual transmission. So fixed it. I don't have to spend thousands of dollars at the dealership this week, so I'm happy about that. I'm sure I would have got suckered into something or a new car or some bullshit.
Or they, the
yeah,
dealership, they always find magical unicorns poking holes and stuff.
Yeah, I'm just glad YouTube was there because that's what saved me, because that's how I found out that trick. So I was like, oh, it seems that everybody's with these Fords doing that to fix the issue. But I'm glad I got that all out of my hair. I can focus on Diablo because I believe that starts either tomorrow or Tuesday for the seasonal. So I'm hyped about that. So I'm glad I got all the car issues out of the way so I can focus on my seasonal character. Got all my renowned open, ready to go. So ready to definitely jump into that this week, but ready to get into these topics.
Right on, good sir. And just to recap real quick for me, I actually started playing Wild Hearts, and I've actually been having a lot of fun. I didn't get as like enthralled with Monster Hunter as everybody else did, but for whatever reason, I picked up Wild Hearts, and I'm just like really enjoying Wild Hearts, and it's honestly a very beautiful game at times, and I'm actually enjoying the strategy of just figuring out like where the weak points are on the animals and just how you're going to conduct yourself in your strategy in attacking the animal, because it's not just like walk in and like kick its ass. I mean, there's times like you get frustrated because like, I mean, I've had a fight last about a half hour, 45 minutes. So definitely a big fun experience. Have you guys tried Wild Hearts at all?
Not me.
Okay. Well, I don't know why, but I just decided to want to check it out, and definitely I've been having a lot of fun with it. Just random purchase on my end. But all right, getting into everything. So for those that don't know, yes, our legendary host, Mr. Invader Gaming, is not here tonight. He is actually out there kicking it in the sunshine and sand on his honeymoon. Congratulations to him and his new wife, and definitely excited for the both of you guys. And we look forward to when you get back, good sir. And so definitely I will be helping host the show this weekend and next weekend. And then after that, Invader will be back. And to kind of just do what he always does, please be sure to follow, like, subscribe the show down below. Also shout it out on any major social media platform that you prefer. And we definitely enjoy everybody that's in the chat already. And thank you for being here. So let's have some fun. If you guys have not been living under a rock, I mean, there is no way. I mean, everybody is talking about it. I walked into a GameStop last night and I literally heard people talking about it in GameStop. It was insane. So at this point, Microsoft was able to defend themselves quite well in court, and the FTC was denied their preliminary injunction on Tuesday morning, essentially kind of like capping off what has been like over 18 months of craziness. And that is where, to the excitement of a lot of people, including some of the panel members here, I've had a lot of fun covering the ABK deal, but I know there's a lot of people that are ready for it to be over. And that is why tonight is probably more than likely going to be one of the last times we actually get to have this discussion. This is like the post roundup of everything that has taken place, because it has been an absolute crazy show. Microsoft, again, was able to defend themselves quite well in court, but also to make it even more interesting, it has come out over the past few days that Miss Lena Khan, the chairman of the FTC, is actually also in a lot of hot water with how she's been conducting herself, not only as the chairman of the FTC, but as the United States Congress has said, is she is at this point essentially wasting taxpayer money in taking on cases that are actually pro-consumer. The United States Congress recognizes that Microsoft's purchase of Activision is actually pro-consumer, and that actually Ms. Khan should have not even tried to pull the stunt she did in trying to block the deal. And so therefore, we also not only saw the preliminary injunction denied, but also we saw her trying to appeal it in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals over in California also was a complete dud. They denied any judicial relief, and so therefore Microsoft is allowed to close the deal probably pretty soon. There is some speculation that Mr. Crusader could get in on his side here in a little bit. But let's just start off with how excited we are that we are finally able to close out Activision and get on in gaming. Let's start with you, Mr. General MLD. What did you think about the news? Were you excited? How did you feel? And is it about damn time?
Yes, it is about damn time. A year plus and change. It literally, they should make a documentary about this when it's all said and done, like they did about the origins of Xbox. Because I don't know, it just went right down to the wire. Like everyone was uncertain, people were confident, but like not willing to 100% commit to it. So I don't know, it's the way it went down. Lena Khan, like she just had this ideology of just big tech bad, and all she saw was Microsoft's $1 trillion corporation. That's it, period. Like I gotta go after her. I gotta go after them, that kind of thing. Doesn't even look at the market that they're competing in, and it bit her and the entire organization in the ass, because now their funding got cut. They lost the court case. They lost the appeal, and yeah, the agency's in tatters right now. Like, yeah, so I mean, we don't really care about this stuff. I mean, it's not really gaming, but the fact is, like, they played a part in holding up this thing. Like, they ironically were trying to prevent competition. So I'm glad that reason prevailed, and we are now on the verge of being a player in gaming that just cannot be ignored anymore. Like, Xbox is now a force to be reckoned with, and they're just getting started, in my opinion. This is just it's an accelerant to where Xbox wants to be. So, but regardless, I'm glad that it's all behind us. We can stop talking about it, and we can start getting back to the games. What games are being added to Game Pass? What is happening in the future? And that's what I'm really, really looking forward to.
Oh, definitely. That's why we are talking about the bright future of gaming, because it is definitely a big future for everybody involved, especially the consumers. Real quick, before we get on to our next panel member, I want to thank you everybody for the amazing super chats. We have Mr. Dragonheart Yobi. I'm thank you for 2 super chats totaling $12. And I also really thank you for checking out my channel. Thank you for all your kind thoughts. And honestly, good sir, you are one of the shining examples on social media of being a very positive individual and always kind of like keeping your spirits high, even when things can get crazy. And also thank you to Mr. Carlos Alvarado. Definitely, yes, Xbox Live is definitely that's some news that we're going to get here towards shortly. Yes, there's some big changes coming to Xbox Live. It is a new dawn. A lot of things are taking place right now in the Xbox brand. And let's just say after the month of August, it's going to be a whole new world. So let's get back to the discussion. Mr. Shockley, what are you excited now that this is literally coming to a close? What do you think of everything that has taken place, and, you know, just your overall thoughts?
Yeah, it's good that we finally got an answer like this week on everything getting through. I think what we found out was that the Sony, I feel like Sony kind of duped the FTC into fighting like their campaign or their argument, which kind of ultimately left to, was their downfall. Because I think Jez Corden pointed out the amount of times that Sony was mentioned in their final argument, like dwarfed, the title or word of consumer, and which the judge had to keep. That's when you kind of lost, when the judge has to like keep like making your case for you, like why you keep bringing up Sony. You shouldn't be bringing up the other company. You should be bringing up how consumers are going to be hurt by this, not how Sony or specifically a consumer that bought something on Sony consumers have choices, so they can make those choices if they want to go to another company or they need to buy this or what have you to play a certain game that Sony already, makes exclusive, or, because they do similar other deals themselves, then there's not really a hurt to consumers. They still have a choice. So there's still competition. It's not a monopoly. Everybody, keeps trying to. What's going to be a monopoly is if like Xbox pulled out, or if, thank God, Xbox got into the gaming space, because had they not, we would have had the GameCube to fight off, the PS2, or worse yet, the PS4 versus the Wii U. That would have just been a quick death, and they could have, done whatever they wanted for however many years it took, like 3 or 4 years. It even took Nintendo to figure that out with the Switch. So yeah, I think they kind of duped the FTC. Whereas I think had Sony not gone so hard and they had just like maybe signed that deal, they may have took more of the CMA's kind of argument about it, because the CMA was just like, yeah, there's obviously not really a case here on the console side. And that's why they didn't even bother arguing it. They argued something that they could that might hold up better, in the sense that, hey, you can't, it's like that Donald Rumsfeld quote. It's like that unknown knowns, or like you don't know anything about cloud. So you can say, hey, potentially there might be a good potential that consumers are going to get hurt by this, because Microsoft has such a stranglehold of, once that market kicks off, they're just going to be so dominant. It's just not going to be good for the consumer. There's not going to be competition. But instead, they just went the whole Sony route, and then it's like they kind of had to get taught how the whole industry works. And it's like the judge had to almost teach them, even though the judge doesn't really probably know, jack about the gaming industry. Had to teach them, like, wait, doesn't Sony do these deals? Wouldn't this, if they did make it exclusive, wouldn't that make Sony make their consumer offer, better service for their consumers on their subscription model, or with their Thor game, or like they said, or God of War? So she had to literally like make the case, like, hey, this is only going to help competition. So it's like I saw somebody with a YouTube posting of like, hey, this is going to be consolidation is not good for consumers, like the judge's last line, how this is going to be good. I'm like, well, the third place console, or the last place console, just became more competitive against other dominant players in the business. So I think more competition, now they're more competitive. How did consumers lose? I don't see that. So, but that was just funny to see all the beans spilled on both sides, all the redacted stuff that didn't get redacted. So that was definitely cool info that we don't typically get to see in other districts or countries, when they don't it's not as public as I think what we do in America. So but yeah, and then you saw Sony bend the knee and sign that 10-year deal, and that was just for COD, where I remember those first early tweets from Phil was like, hey, don't worry, because Sony's tweet was like, well, I'm sure Microsoft's going to be honoring these deals and keeping Activision games going to PlayStation gamers. And then you've had Phil, and we laughed at that, but then Phil backed it up, was like, yep, that's what we're doing. And then they didn't sign that deal, and they went through this whole rigmarole that's stretched out almost to the brink where the fine, or the $3 billion was going to have to get paid to Activision. And now they got offered a 10-year deal, and it's just COD, just like they've been offering Nintendo and everybody else. So it's like, you could have probably just had more, because guess what? They weren't going to pull COD anyway, because they would have to still figure out a way to lose that many. They don't need to offer to pull COD. They can just put COD on Game Pass and slowly trickle away your casual people that buy a PlayStation to play COD. They'll just come over to Game Pass over time. And then the times that they aren't there, they'll collect $70 gladly from you. But like, they don't lose in that scenario. So there's no reason to pull it. But there's an incentive to maybe not launch any other games, if they ever, allow the other studios to come into fold. We'll get into that later, but now you kind of screwed yourself in that scenario where, hey, maybe Microsoft's like, well, now you don't call any of the shots, and now you're not going to get anything else potentially, but we'll see.
Now, definitely, there's a lot of good stuff that is coming out of this whole, so for me to just kind of put it out there. So this whole FTC battle, Xbox trying to buy Activision, the regulatory BS that has taken place. This has honestly been a learning experience for a lot of people to see that just because you are a $1 trillion company doesn't mean you get to walk through the magical glass doors of any company out there and say, this is mine now. You could see that these processes take a lot of time and they can be very lengthy and very in-depth. The Bethesda deal did not turn into as big of a circus as Activision did. So it kind of went under the radar. We just saw a lot of people just excited over Bethesda being purchased, and we didn't really have this huge explosion of regulatory concerns. But now we can see that it isn't always as cut and dry. And so that is why it's a good learning experience for everybody to know that just because you have the money to buy a company does not mean that that always happens or comes to fruition. There's always a lot of hurdles to get there. And so therefore, that's why these processes take a very large amount of time. Speaking of a large amount of time, the ABK deal has obviously dragged on for a long time. And there is one of us here that is absolutely tickled, excited that it is finally over and that he might be able to finally start commenting on other things on Reddit and other forums that he's on. So, Mr. Crusader, help us stick a fork in this subject and this chapter of Xbox and the gaming industry. How do you feel? How excited are you? And let's cap this off so that way we can move on to bigger and better things in this discussion.
Volume warning, volume warning, volume warning. Chat, you've been warned. I'll give you another 2 seconds. Okay. Woo! We're finally done talking about court cases and nonsense. Let's go. Yeah, I'm quite happy. I'm more excited for the next discussion we're gonna have. I have a couple things to say on this part. Number one, I would be prepared for. There's 2 times tomorrow when the deal could close. Right? There's 2 points tomorrow. It could close right before markets open in the United States, or it could close right after the CAT tribunal hearing. Florian Mueller, Foss Patents, and Tom Warren made very good points that because the CMA is coming to the table and working with Microsoft and Activision, they may not attempt to close over them, at least without permission, because in theory, the CMA can just grant them permission to close over them while they're still ongoing. But because they're all coming to the table, and yeah, there's the July 18th date, but they can literally just extend that without a renegotiation. They can extend it like 3 or 4 times. So they could just extend the date and just let it go and extend it to the same August deadline as the CMA, though the CMA has also said they don't think it'll take to that date. But if it doesn't close when you wake up in the morning tomorrow, if you're on the East Coast, wait until it'll be like 2:30 UK time. I actually don't know what time that'll be in the for us here in the United States. I don't have a thing open to cross over the time zones. But if it doesn't close after that, it may not close for a couple more days. I think it'll close tomorrow morning personally. I would just be prepared that don't get it all up in a bunch if it doesn't close immediately, would be just my advice, right? Like it's gonna close. Like it is 99.99999999999% chance of closing. I refuse to say 100 because I don't put 100% on literally anything. We get hit by a meteor before it closes. I don't know, but like I would put a safe bet on it closing tomorrow or Tuesday. there's some other evidence that there might close tomorrow, because the we talked about just briefly in the intro about that whole Xbox the changes to the services structure with Xbox. That seemed like a thing to announce alongside the Activision deal closing, personally. So like that could be there. But yeah, I'm so excited this is done. I think the one thing that I think is going to be a thing that comes out of this is the PlayStation brand, and this is not like a public perception. This is more like the private industry perception. Might be a little damaged after all of the stuff with the court cases and how they spoke about like EA and things like that. This is not a good look for Jim Ryan, because Jim Ryan basically used a lot of political capital in like what he was saying, like with saying that like Battlefield has never even come close to Call of Duty, and like they'll never be able to, and things like that. And basically just a lot of the ways that they've been talking, how like they were like, we just want your deal to fail. Well, what if there are other companies that want to secure deals? They now have to worry about PlayStation, the market leader, being in their way. So I do think that in the background, this may be the structure that Jim Ryan took to be resistant against this deal, which he should have been resistant against this deal, but the way he went about it, and the way instead of playing hardball and just trying to get a good a very good outcome for Sony, the outright trying to block it was not a good play, in my opinion. And I think that'll come back to bite PlayStation in the arse just a little bit. But that's about all I have to say here.
No, I have to agree
plus
with
they
you.
had the bills, or I was going to say, plus they had the beans spilled on like all their redacted stuff that didn't.
Yeah,
so.
like it just it wasn't a good thing for them.
Was
Also,
it worth it?
We did get
No.
email. We did get some email leaks today from Phil Spencer to Jim Ryan. Tom Warren posted them on Twitter, the images of them. And originally, PlayStation was offered till 2027 for PlayStation, or for Call of Duty originally, and they did end up getting a 10-year deal, though they could have gotten a 10-year deal months ago, right? So they did end up getting a better deal by holding out than they would have originally. But like,
I don't know about that, because
Not
they could have gotten more titles. I mean, like,
yes, no.
Literally,
they
the only name on that deal is Call of Duty
Yes,
at this
they got
point. Like, nothing like shooting yourself in the foot for content.
They got a better deal than they were originally offered. Let's put it that way. They
for
were
Call
originally
of Duty
offered 3 years.
exclusively.
Yes, they were originally offered 3 years for Call of Duty exclusively. They ended up getting 10 years for Call of Duty specifically. Now, I think they overplayed their hand, because evidently Bobby Kotick offered them an extension on the whatchamacallit, their
Marketing?
the current deal that they have. Bobby Kotick offered them an extension on it, and they denied that. So they overplayed their hand a lot in thinking that the deal was going to be dead in the water.
Right.
And they ended up passing over what would have been a better deal for them.
And that's where sometimes you should not always think the grass is greener on the other side. And also, when you're in these processes, don't be walking around with a can of gas and burning down bridges, because you just never know who you might need to have as a friend at the end of it all. Because, I mean, like, Jim Ryan cut down EA.
Yep.
He even, like, I mean, like, in his statements, he even cut down his own development studios. Basically, nothing that PlayStation does can hold a flame to Call of Duty. What? Dude, you have like some of the top talent in the industry. Talk about like not acknowledging all their hard work and their pedigree. But okay, you're right. Call of Duty is the end all be all of gaming. Anyways.
Yeah. So like my end case is, I think we might see just a little bit of a shift in the industry towards being a little bit more resistant to PlayStation. And a lot of industry platforms are very happy with Xbox right now, like Nvidia, and like all the cloud services are like, hell yeah, you know what I mean? And you do have to give the EU and even the CMA and FTC some credit for like the fact that like these other services are just getting better deals, right? Like if they hadn't been so resistant about cloud gaming, then like would Nvidia have gotten, you know, would Nvidia have gotten a deal? Would Nintendo was? We knew that from the beginning because Brad Smith was talking in February of 2022 about expanding Call of Duty to Nintendo, right? Like that's on record. He was on an interview on CNBC. But would Boosteroid or what is it, Ubitus or any of these cloud offerings, would they have had access to Call of Duty? You know what I mean? Like, would they have gotten access to the? Because even Xbox is bringing their own titles. The Xbox platform titles are coming to like they're already on GeForce now before the deal closed, and like that was the commitment they made to all these cloud platforms. So like, there is at least a kind of silver lining to all of the absolute bullshit that the EU and CMA and FTC kind of put Microsoft through for this, because there were some concessions made that are beneficial towards a larger amount of people, and I think that's a good thing personally. Others may not. I really don't care about the exclusivity of Activision Blizzard King like in the slightest. They don't make enough games for me to personally care. They make Call of Duty, and that's never good. If Minecraft isn't going to be an exclusive IP, Call of Duty sure as hell isn't going to be an exclusive IP. So like, I'm just like, you know, at least there was some good that came out of their resistive nonsense.
No, for sure. PlayStation's reputation has definitely been strained. I mean, if you look at it, they are the market leader, and they have been trying to control gaming and and restrict the access of software. Yep. And they have also been pretty much essentially holding back the cloud, like this with PlayStation and all the screaming and crying that Jim Ryan did by trying to prevent this deal. He was actually holding back the cloud market from ever being able to be a competitive market because they weren't going to get access to certain titles that they'll have now. So it just goes to show like what Sony has done to really rub a lot of people the wrong way. And this is one of those funny statements where if you really think about it, if we want to put it on high school terms, because we all know how the console war can work, Sony is like that one guy at school that happens to be the cool guy, but he's an a-hole at the same time. And then when you watch like the guy essentially get his butt kicked, and you just kind of like have to have a good laugh where you're just like, yeah, you kind of like deserve that because you're just like an a-hole. You may be the popular guy, but you're not exactly the nice guy. And I mean, like, I don't have anything wrong. So like me and Crusader were talking, I don't have anything bad to say about PlayStation, the games they bring out, the titles that they have. I love the games that PlayStation produces. It's more like all the chip on my shoulder towards PlayStation is just really about how Jim Ryan conducts himself, and really kind of like, I mean, like literally Jim Ryan is one of the most dirtiest executives in console gaming underneath Bobby Kotick. I'm not saying that Jim Ryan is like a horrible individual and is like aggressive to people, but I'm just saying he has some very underhanded practices that really kind of like hold back gaming in a way. So, and I don't agree with everything that he does personally when it comes to running PlayStation. But
I got a quick 2-minute tangent.
The facade faded away.
What'd you say?
MLD, you go.
Oh yeah. No, I totally agree with what you were saying there. Like a lot of Xbox fans, they kind of see, but this whole case, it really just let the general gaming public kind of know just what kind of stuff Jim Ryan's willing to do, and the tactics he uses. I don't know. It just the facade went away, and you see them for their true colors. Like these, he is aggressive, like a little too aggressive. It kind of makes you understand why Xbox is doing what they're doing. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad more people see that now.
Did you guys? This is like a 2-second tangent. Did you guys see the really cool like cloud news that we got this week for Xbox? That cloud service that's bringing 1,400 retro games that you can play.
I did see that. Yeah, that definitely was on my radar.
$30 a year, $80 for lifetime. They have a pretty good. I want to hear more about how like it actually performs over the cloud, but like they have a pretty good roster. Now, if you're someone who's big into emulation, that's not really something for you. But if you're someone who doesn't want to like go through the hassle of like setting up all the emulators and the gray area of downloading the ROMs for what is essentially abandonware, I mean, this is a good solution. And there's quite a few quality stuff on there, and they're trying to license more and more. And they have some of like the old classic, like old Star Wars games that like no one has been able to license since then. Like, that's really cool to me. So like I thought that was like awesome news this week.
No, it's on my radar. I was like $80 for lifetime. I might buy into that because if the service gets big enough, they could take that lifetime away. And I know a lot of people that have access to certain software that was at one time offered lifetime subscriptions, and now those lifetime purchases have gone away, and now you have to pay monthly for it. But the people who bought the lifetime subscription are like grandfathered in. So I mean, if that service turns out to be really big, I mean, it'd be really great to have that lifetime subscription and have access to retro games. Because the funny part is, did you guys see that article about like 87% of games that have been released are no longer accessible?
Yep. Well, I mean, that makes sense because only just recently did we get into the digital era. You know what I mean? Like, most games aren't accessible because they were produced for consoles that like you could only produce the cartridges for so long, and like the hardware only existed for so long. Now we're in like
but that kind of also goes down the road. Like, I understand it's a cartridge game, but also a lot of these companies that also restrict the ability to download the ROMs off those cartridges, and now people got to kind of sell them on like black market websites to have access to these games. It almost feels like the connoisseurs of gaming are actually the ones that are keeping these retro games alive by doing stuff that they shouldn't be.
Yeah, they absolutely are. That's 100% correct. And like it's a big fault in the industry that there just isn't quite as much care for re-releasing them in a more permanent way. Because like there's like the Sega mini consoles, the Atari mini consoles, the Nintendo mini consoles. Like they're cool, but like what would be cooler? Making an official emulator and launching the games on sale on PC. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, for real? Like,
or on, like this solution on consoles for these digital distributed games. Now, I'd like it if you could straight up purchase them, but I'm not gonna look a gift horse in the eye. You know what I mean? Like, this is really cool that they're doing it like this.
Well, gaming is an art form in itself, and this is what totally blows my mind, shocks me, is thousands of people every single day go to the Louvre to go stare at the Mona Lisa painted by Leonardo da Vinci a very long time ago. So why is it like why is games not treated in the same manner of where people still to this day can go to an emulator, a website, someplace and pay to experience that art form? It's just like they're completely blocked off from it.
That's why I'm really happy with like Xbox like being like all in on their backwards compatibility program. Now they have a true business reason for that, and that's Game Pass, right? Like the more games that they can have that just like exist forever, because you attract larger like groups of people from different ages, because like you have something like Morrowind up, and some new people might want to play Morrowind, but some people who played Morrowind as a kid, they might want to play it. And so like there's a business reason for Xbox to do it, but because there's a business reason for them to do it, there's a desire for it, and people see that this can be a great thing. You know what I mean? Like I play original Xbox and Xbox 360 games all the time. Played Dragon Age for the first time ever, a game that I should have played years ago. But I played the Dragon Age games for the first time ever this year, and the only reason I could do that on Xbox was because they had backwards compatibility. And I mean, the first Dragon Age game is like, it's not available on PlayStation at all anymore, and it is barely functioning without a ton of effort on the user's part on PC to install things that fix it to play on modern systems or on like modern hardware. So like the whole like I love to see that Xbox is known for supporting cloud gaming. Xbox is known for supporting like quote retro or older games. So like this service of 1,400 retro ROM games, it makes total sense to be on Xbox. You know what I mean? And
for sure.
It's great.
So speaking of keeping old titles alive and big future offerings, let's just kind of move into the one subject that everybody's excited to talk about. So moving on from the whole regulatory BS of the ABK deal, let's really talk about what is really got us all excited is what the future may hold for us all. And we're not here to just play this game of like where Xbox is going to try to like hammer nails in the coffin over at PlayStation. This is more like to just express the future of gaming and just our excitement for the fact that we're going to see titles possibly get resurrected that haven't been around for a long time because Activision has been too over focused on Call of Duty. Like, I'm hoping that they get away from doing yearly releases of Call of Duty and they go to every 2, maybe 3 years, which will free up a lot of developers like Toys for Bob, and maybe they'll be able to start exploring old stuff. Like, I mean, I'd love for Spyro the Dragon to make a resurgence. I'd love for a more up-to-date Tony Hawk Pro Skater to possibly come out. There's a lot of different titles that everybody here that everybody loved growing up that aren't around anymore because Activision became way too hyper-focused with Call of Duty, but also to show exactly how this whole acquisition is going to make a better future for the gaming industry as a whole. We're now going to see Activision be able to unionize. We're going to see a lot of these developers that Activision has been running into the ground finally get treated like human beings, and they're going to be able to stop like kind of living in fear over some of the insane practices that Activision has. Like we all remember that article that one of the lead directors of World of Warcraft walked away from his position because he was literally required by policies in Activision to find issues with employees, even if they were exemplary employees. They were basically the directors, the supervisors of these departments were told that they still had to find the one bad apple in the bunch, even if they did nothing wrong. The entire group could not function perfectly. There has to be a problem somewhere. And then also we're going to see stuff like Call of Duty become more of a level playing field. And also that whole thing of like, exclusive XP boosts on certain platforms go away. And we're going to start seeing possibly a more inclusive environment for some of these titles. So it goes way beyond just what Xbox can do to grow their brand, but they will also finally be able to create a more even playing field for titles that use crossplay in a heavy manner. What do you think, Crusader? Let's start with you. What is your excitement for what this deal is going to bring us? What titles would you like to see? And how do you think this is going to give us a bigger, stronger future for the gaming industry?
Sure. The biggest thing that I'd like to see with a Microsoft and Activision Blizzard closure would be for Microsoft, because they have I know I talk about this business incentive thing with Game Pass, but Game Pass has a lot of business incentives that aren't very normal to the regular gaming industry, because the more games you have, the better. Especially if they've already been released and things like that. But the biggest thing I'd like to see is for them to go out and relicense it. I'm not saying go get new licenses, but relicense the already developed like Transformers games and the like Deadpool game, and there's a bunch of games that Activision has released previously that just aren't licensed anymore, and they can't sell them anymore. Even though some of them came out during the Xbox One era, like War for Cybertron was remastered during the Xbox One era, but it was delisted like a year later because they couldn't because of the license with Hasbro ran out. And so it would be really cool to see Microsoft, who has a business incentive to have as many games as they can on Game Pass, go out and maybe make some of these get these games relicensed that already exist. And some of them, maybe we could I'm not saying reopen the backwards compatibility program, but maybe because they, control Activision and they have some more swing, maybe they can get the ball rolling on some things that they didn't think they could ever get relicensed before, because they're in a totally different position now to do so. So that would be my biggest hope. I'd like to see I'd love to see some non Call of Duty FPSs come from the some of the Call of Duty studios. Like, I'd love to see a resurgence of Hexen. I don't know if people know what Hexen is. I think most people on the panel do, but if our audience doesn't know, it's basically Doom, but instead of guns, it's magic. And it heavily Immortals of Avium, the EA game that's coming out later this year, is heavily inspired by Hexen, at least in my opinion. It has to be. But I would really, really love to see like Hexen return, or I'd really, really love to see like them do some like a new take on like a like an FPS, like just a different FPS of some kind. And I'd love to see some of the IPs that they just kind of own, even if it wasn't Activision working on them, right? Because I think the changing of Call of Duty and like shifting it that takes a long time, because they have to get into a place, like, because they don't want to disrupt the business too much. They're going to be disrupting it a lot by putting the stuff on Game Pass, because that's going to shift how money's earned and things like that. And you don't want to do too much of that at once. So like, we're not going to see very quickly teams get taken off Call of Duty, but it would be, you know, over time it would be cool to see like that kind of thing evolve. But what can happen faster than that is, well, you know, Activision, you have all of these IPs that you're sitting on, and you're doing nothing with them. Could we maybe could we maybe let one of the Xbox game studios, if they would like a shot at one of these IPs, to do something with it? Or could we offer it as an IP for a one of our global publishing groups to maybe do something with it? You know, it would be like an external studio, but like you could be heavily involved, and we can get this done. Because again, Microsoft has a business reason to want a ton of variety in what they offer, right? Because Game Pass kind of needs a ton of variety because it needs to attract as many different users as possible. So, you know, maybe we could get things like Tony Hawk Pro Skater relicense. Tony Hawk obviously wants that relicense. He's talked about it, that he wants a new Tony Hawk Pro Skater game that's not just a remake or a remaster. Could we maybe get that via some kind of deal, even if it's with an external party, like or like a new Spyro the Dragon, maybe, you know, Platonic, you know, the people what Platonic did, which was Platonic, the rabbit, which oh, that was Ukulele. They did Ukulele, right? Platonic?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So like maybe Platonic could do a take on like Spyro the Dragon, you know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of things that could happen even without Activision Blizzard's studios doing things. And that's one thing I think a lot of people are kind of missing, right? That in the short term, right, don't expect suddenly the studios are out of the Call of Duty mines, but maybe the IPs can be, and something can be happening with them. And that's the biggest thing I'd like to see, is a resurgence of a lot of these old IPs that have, because for a lot of people they'll be new IP. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of like Perfect Dark is practically like a new IP coming back to Microsoft, because there's generations. Like, I've never played a Perfect Dark game in my life. When that remake comes out, I will be like, it'll be my first time jumping in. So like, to me, it's totally new. And so there's a lot of content that they have, like Hexen, that would be totally new to a ton of people that I would just love to see. And the thing I'm most curious to see what happens with Sekiro, right? Because Activision doesn't own the IP. They publish the IP for FromSoft. FromSoft owns the IP. But I'm very interested to see how that license ends up working. Like, will it go into Game Pass because Activision publishes it? And that's very similar to Sunset Overdrive, which Microsoft does not own. You know, PlayStation owns that IP via there's a subsidiary, Insomniac, but Xbox publishes it, and therefore, at least the version that's on the Xbox One is in Game Pass. It'd be very curious to see, is that going to be the case with Sekiro? The same thing's true with the original Mass Effect for the 360. Microsoft published the original one, and it's on Game Pass proper, and you can play it without Game Pass Ultimate. It's just on Game Pass. So I'm very curious for like a lot of things like that. Like, there's a lot of edge cases where it's like, how is this going to be handled? I'm curious to see how Call of Duty is going to be handled in the interim, because we know that they can't launch the Call of Duty games onto Game Pass at least the new ones right away. We don't know anything about the already released ones. Like, can Call of Duty 2 through Ghosts, can those enter Game Pass right away?
I'm sure all the
and if they
360
can,
ones will.
because it all depends on what that contract looks like with Sony for the marketing for Call of Duty. Is it as an entire brand? I can't say. I don't have the contract in front of me. You know what I mean? I really hope that all the Call of Duty games enter immediately, because I would very much love to play a bunch of the old Call of Duty games. I'll play through probably all of them straight from 2 onwards. Unfortunately, Call of Duty 1 is not backwards compatible on Xbox.
I'm pretty sure to appease the CMA and the other people, because literally, if they start definitely affecting the market seriously, we've all seen that the FTC at the end of the day is allowed to try to unwind a deal if they can prove something. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if that agreement that they made with PlayStation also included adding Call of Duty games to not only Game Pass, but PlayStation Plus subscription services as well.
See, here's the thing, because they said that they were open, but they would have to license them, because that would be, and I don't even know that PlayStation would necessarily want it, because Microsoft wants their stuff in Game Pass, because the Game Pass is a huge part of their.
Well, I'm talking the older title. When I'm talking the older titles, I'm talking older titles. I'm not talking the newer ones. I'm talking the older titles.
What's super interesting with the older titles is the first one that could actually show up on PS Plus would be Ghosts. There's no PS3 backwards compatibility. They might be able to put them on
they
the
wouldn't
cloud
even have to work.
streaming.
They could just put the 360 ones in there.
Yeah, they could put that specifically in the cloud streaming variant, but that would suck.
Yeah, no one's gonna bother.
No one's gonna play that. Because I'll be real. I try cloud gaming for a lot of things. I like it for a lot of turn-based games. The last time I tried PS Plus Premium, it was a miserable experience when I was trying to play the Ratchet and Clank games on my PS5. I had to actually pull. I have my PS3 connected at all times, but I had to actually pull out my discs and put in and play them on that, because I couldn't take the input lag. Now that could. I've heard people have a great experience where they don't have the input lag, so it's probably my distance from a data center. But that goes to show that, well, I have a bad experience simply because of my distance to a data center. It's not my internet. I can guarantee that. It's a network engineer. But that is a good point. Could the old ones also show up in PS Plus? And whatever.
So that could be a major shall I say, talking point on the difference between the two services, where one allows you to download games, the other one is all streaming. Yep. And this goes back onto what Judge Corley said. Why doesn't PlayStation make their subscription service more competitive?
Better. Yeah.
And I'm just now it's hey, Xbox could be well, it's not my fault that they're all turning to Game Pass, because you can download the game and play it locally versus streaming it off of a server. That's not our fault.
Yeah, and so I'm very interested to hear how, moving forward, what exactly, because we'll have a much better idea of what the Call of Duty agreement with PlayStation looks like, simply implicitly by what Call of Duty games come to the service when and how, right? Does that make sense? We'll know more simply because this is how it'll work.
Right.
And I would assume, I'm pretty certain that the older ones will be able to come. I'm curious to see where the cutoff is, or if the cutoff is the game's been out for a year or things like that. I'm curious to see how long will it take for Modern Warfare 2 2022 to launch onto the service, right? We know that everything will be on in 2025, because that's when the deal expires, and that deal is not going to be renewed. But I'm very curious to see exactly what Microsoft can and can't do with the Call of Duty franchise. Really excited to see more people playing Diablo, because Diablo will definitely be on Game Pass. It was really funny because the FTC lost the day after what's his name, Mike Ybarra, said that there's no plans for Diablo to come to Game Pass at this time. Which isn't wrong. He's not lying. They don't have a contract in place because they're not a bought company. He has to use language like that.
And there's no decision yet.
Yeah, there was no decision yet.
It could have been
and-
denied the next day and be like, well, yeah, it's not coming.
Yeah. And yeah, they can't have he couldn't say anything, you know. And because to say that, oh yeah, it's coming to Game Pass would mean that, oh, they're already operating as a merged unit, and that would be a big no-no while there's a trial going on to block them, right? So his language was very precise and on purpose. But yeah, like when that closes, Phil already said that every Activision Blizzard title that they can bring, every last one that they have the ability to bring, they are going to bring to the service. So, you know, if it can come, it'll come. Now, I would assume that the rollout will be slower, akin to the Bethesda rollout, right? Because Bethesda's games didn't all come at once. They came in like 2 waves on console, and I think it was like 3 or 4 waves on PC, because on PC they had to actually port a bunch of them to the Windows Store, and then they also had to like they closed down like the Bethesda launcher and stuff like that. So like that takes time. With Activision Blizzard, some of it they can link they could link the profile to BattleNet, and so kind of like with EA Play, where like you don't actually launch the EA games through the Xbox launcher, you launch them through EA Play. So that'll be another interesting to see. And I'm also curious if whatchamacallit will come. The like how they're gonna handle World of Warcraft, for example. Is WoW gonna come to Game Pass at all? Is WoW going to are they going to include expansions if it does come? Is there going to be like a discount on the subscription? Things like that. There's a lot of things that are going to be really interesting to see how it's all going to work. I'm done. That's all I wanted to say.
So before we move on to the next panel member, here's a good question for everybody. Think with this acquisition, does this mean we could see the Xbox backwards compatibility mill fire back up?
I was talking about that. I think that Xbox has enough reasons to want to go out and relicense some of the content that that Activision lost the licenses to. I don't think it'll fire back up. I think it's more like, oh, we had the opportunity to bring these like 6 games to the service. Don't expect more, but because of the acquisition, we had the ability to do this. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but it also, like, I'm wondering just over time if by some chance, like now they have access to a very wide breadth of older retro games that could potentially, shall I say, kind of like just like, hey, what's the point? You know, let's just send out a couple emails and let's just see if anybody's interested at these companies if they want to go down that road.
Sure. I don't think, I'm going to be real, I don't think that has ever stopped, right? They've told us that, you know, the program is closed, but I don't think there's ever a point where Microsoft is not kind of like poking the waters with that personally. I just think that because they'll own Activision Blizzard now, that as they have a bigger reason than Activision Blizzard ever did to try and go out and relicense titles.
And that's why I'm wondering, like, did Activision even actively attempt to fix any of the licensing issues? Like one of the big ones that I see a lot of people mention, Deadpool.
Yeah.
A game that was actually backwards compatible. It was sold on the Xbox One marketplace. I should have bought it when I had the chance, but I didn't because I was completely at the time unaware of the concept of delisting a game. And now the only way to play that game is to either A, have bought it when it was available digitally, or you got to go out and find a physical copy of the game and put it into the console. And that's where I'm like, in my mind, hoping that maybe Xbox is a little more incentivized to go out and try to fix some of these licensing issues, especially with like how Deadpool is becoming a major thing for Disney, because I mean they own the Marvel licenses, so it would actually be worth both Disney and Microsoft to try to fix titles like Deadpool that have been delisted.
I see Deadpool is one of the big ones, and I think Transformers would be a huge one. Like I mentioned it earlier, because Transformers is a huge IP, huge,
right?
And like Microsoft needs some bigger IPs on their system. Now, if they go out and relicense Deadpool, it'll probably, because that game was also on PS4, right? They'll also probably relicense it on PlayStation, I'd assume as well. Again, just because if you're going through the effort of relicensing something, you might as well get the biggest bang for your buck. It's already been released, just relicense it. But I really, really hope that because Xbox has this business incentive with Game Pass to offer, a wide variety of content, that they will be more incentivized to go out and relicense things.
No, and Xbox has actually done a good job. Like one of the big examples of really going to bat when it comes to fixing a game that has huge licensing issues like Deadpool is Too Human. That game is actually given away for free on the Xbox marketplace because technically that game has been under so much legal crap that game actually is not allowed to be sold. So at this point, Will's like, well, why don't we just give it away? And that's where Microsoft has actually figured out ways to keep certain titles that are worth playing on the marketplace. And that's where I'm really hoping that Xbox does that with a lot of Activision titles.
But you know what else they did it with too recently, right? Quantum Break.
Right? There was the licensing issue with that one.
No, most companies would have just let it slide. But Quantum Break, well, number one, Microsoft poured a huge amount of money into that game and show what the weird hybrid that it was. I loved it, but the weird hybrid that it is. But Microsoft has a much bigger business incentive because that is a very unique offering in Game Pass.
Yeah, plus it was a PR thing too. Like people notice it. It's a published game. It was one of the Xbox One's like most well-known games. Like, it's a better look to keep it on.
Yep.
Because of the licensing issue, I actually bought the game when they brought it back for $10. I was like, I'm going to own this game because screw that. I mean, like if something like this can happen just because Microsoft made a deal with a company that didn't exactly like work for them, like
it was the music.
Yeah, and that's where it just turns like, dude, like what is it with the American entertainment industry and freaking music? I mean, music is the biggest bane of everybody's existence when it comes to video games.
So Remedy is like highly known for putting like licensed music into all of their stuff. It's what's like that's what caused Alan Wake to be delisted. It's like at the end of the chapters in Alan Wake, usually some form of licensed music plays. And then they have that Swedish metal band that is in like all of their games. They Children of the Elder God is the song that they play in Alan Wake, and then they play Take Control in Control. And so like there was a lot of licensed music that I can remember in Quantum Break, and like I knew that was gonna happen, but like Microsoft is known for, except for like I think the only thing they don't really bother to relicense is Forza because they have the new you know what I mean? They have the new Forza, and that's a shame. I wish they would relicense those.
Dude, that would take a lot of licensing deals.
Yeah, that is like a several dozen car companies that they have to individually license stuff with. So that sucks. But I could see them getting the Transformers license back. I could see them getting the Deadpool license back. Not to make like more games, just to sell the ones that were already made. Because Microsoft's thing is like, hey, we'll give you this much money to relicense a product that's already been made, has already been on the market, and you just kind of will get free money from this for doing absolutely nothing as a company, Hasbro. What do you say? Or Disney. Hey, we'll put this. You got that Deadpool movie coming out with Ryan Reynolds and what's his name?
Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman. Why don't we put the old Deadpool game up that was fairly popular, and we can kind of ride off the hype. You can make some extra money here. And like, there's no risk.
Could you imagine a delisted game going back on the marketplace? That game would sell gangbusters for all those that felt like they missed out.
I'll buy it immediately because if it can get delisted once, it can get delisted again. I'm not gonna, I think that is probably the biggest thing that I want from this merger is that kind of stuff. Just the bringing back of games. And Microsoft also does that cool thing with like the PC games where like they made a lot of old Bethesda games run natively on PC. You guys saw that it was last year sometime. Like they made like the original Elder Scrolls and some of the old Quakes and Dooms just like work on Windows 10 and 11. Like natively, they fixed the resolution scaling so that they would have proper resolutions at like 4K, 1080p, 1440p, 4K, and stuff like that.
But there's no achievement support though.
Yeah, there's no achievement support, which I wish there was, but like it's still those old games are just simply playable on PC Game Pass. You know what I mean? Those because they're like what 20, 30 years old now. Some of those games. Just like how old is the original Elder Scrolls?
Yeah, then we're talking the 90s here.
Yeah. And that game is Microsoft made sure that Elder Scrolls Arena, a game that like is given away for free, and I'm pretty sure you can get it for free on the Microsoft Store, came out in 1994, 2 years before I was born. and you can just download it and play it. Microsoft put the effort in. Like that's what I'm excited for about this acquisition, because Activision has a lot of classic IPs like that. The old Spider-Man games for the 360. You know the ones like Ultimate Marvel versus, or is it Ultimate, or is it Ultimate Marvel? What are the Marvel fighting games?
Ultimate Alliance.
Is it Ultimate Alliance?
Right.
Yeah, like those games. Like, come on, Disney would have to like. Those are so popular, and Microsoft can go, yeah, we can relicense them and have them relisted in like a month. Like that's what I want to see. Stuff like that.
And it's easy money for these corporations.
It's easy money, and it's probably the quickest thing that we could see a like positive result besides Game Pass, right? Game Pass is Game Pass. But like that's probably one of the fastest things we could see a like awesome, cool result from this acquisition. You know what I mean? Just old games that weren't available are now finally available again because Microsoft has the initiative to do it.
Okay. So speaking of older games, and would you want to say something else, General?
Me? No, I'll wait till it's my thing. All
right. Well, I was going to say, speaking of older games and retro stuff, let's hear from Mr. Eric Shockley real quick. What are you excited for? Because I know you're like heavily into retro gaming and retro game console modding. I'm curious on what you're looking forward to with this whole deal.
Probably the one thing that ends up happening with it is them allowing to maybe slowly, obviously maybe not all once, all the studios that kind of got shoved in to either support COD or support Diablo can start like peeling back one by one, because people are saying, well, they can't do that, they're going to do COD annually. I'm like, they did do this. They did make COD annually, and still we're having games come out of these studios. So like Vicarious Visions rolled into Blizzard. So they're under Blizzard's watch. That's been doing helping with Diablo 4, but now Diablo 4 is out. So I figure like that Blizzard team can kind of like keep it going now that the main thing's out, and do the expansions themselves and stuff like that. So maybe get them back on. I believe, or at least I found on like Wikipedia, that they were, starting like maybe early stages of like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4, but that got canceled. So maybe get that out, because obviously I think
we have a rumor there.
I mean, it's on Wikipedia.
Visions.
That's all I know.
Yeah, there's a rumor with Vicarious Visions that they're working on fixing Warhammer Warcraft Reforged.
Okay.
That's
maybe. I mean, at least if we're getting something out of them, I guess, and not just a support. So I'm all for that. So if it's a
they were supposedly pulled in to fix some older games and like remaster some stuff. That's why Blizzard really wanted them in their unit. Like, because they did Diablo 2 they did the Diablo 2 remake.
Yeah, and so I could see them. Yeah, so if they're gonna help, like you said, was it World of Warcraft?
No, it's Warcraft.
That you just said?
Warcraft 3 Reforged,
or Warcraft.
The remake of Warcraft 3 that was terrible. Supposedly Vicarious is part of the reason that they wanted Vicarious under Blizzard was so that Vicarious could long-term kind of fix Warcraft Reforged. That was a rumor from like a year or so ago.
Oh, okay, gotcha. That was, you said like the remake of like Warcraft 3 back on the
Yeah,
PC.
it was a remake of Warcraft 3 that
Like,
kind of
okay.
went down like a lead balloon.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'm all for that as long as it's also coming to console, if they can get that to work, Halo Wars style. Because I know it's kind of like that type of game, but except you have like a hero. So I mean, I'm all for that as long as they're like working on separately and they're not just like supporting a game that's already like out or a main studio is already doing. But it would be cool if they could at least go back to at least get 3 and 4 Tony Hawk remastered now. I was hoping we'd get that, but also then you had like Toys for Bob, so they can peel back, go back to Crash, Spyro, or work on, hey, Rare has a bunch of IP, you already did Crash and Spyro, okay, cool. Maybe take a crack at one of those, or at least a remake, like basically how those were. So like do a Banjo. Here's how to test the water because that Rare dev was saying, hey, no one wants a Crash or a Banjo game. Cool, we'll just remake. You don't have to, create something all new. Just take it, do a whole new assets, obviously, and basically what you did for Crash and Spyro, which did well, and just do a Banjo package with the first one and Tui. There you go. And then you'll kind of test your water. Oh, okay, it looks like that did really well. Cool, we'll make another one, kind of like they did with the Crash 4. And then you also had High Moon, who did, I think you guys touched on it, Deadpool, Transformers, Dark Watch back on like the PS2. So they've definitely have some experience there. Can go back to making, come up with something, either license or come up something with their own, like cool action game. And then Raven Software, who also did that awesome X-Men Origins Wolverine game. Story-wise, not great because the story of the movie wasn't great either. So that's what you had to work with. But the action part of it, that was probably one of the best Wolverine games ever made until Insomniac releases theirs. They also did Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1. I think Vicarious Visions did the second one. So, and Singularity. I didn't get to play that one, but I heard some good things about that. So at least get Raven Software back. They can, they're definitely well equipped. They've made awesome action games. If anyone's ever played that Wolverine game. So, and they still have plenty of support studios. There's Beanox, Demonware. There's so many. If you go look at their actual list of people that are just support for Call of Duty or Blizzard. So it's just like, definitely that's what I want them to do. Peel back, at least pick one solely, take a few years. Okay, cool. Now we got them off COD and we hired more people to fill those spots. Okay. And then move on and then just try to that way. And I think and people are saying they're not going to do that. I'm like, I think it makes sense also with their model because they need more variety, more of these maybe AA games that some of these studios are making that we got back in the 360 days or PS2 days. And that's going to help, fuel the Game Pass when you have also then the mega big blockbuster ones like COD, Diablo, or whatever the next big AAA game is from all the studios they have now. Those others, they're still going to need those smaller games, like they said, to kind of fill in some of those gaps. So that's where like Toys for Bob or Vicarious Visions or Raven Software can definitely come in and fill the gap with quality content that might not be like a, Last of Us $200 million budget. So that's what I'm definitely looking forward to. And tying into the very first point where they now have that deal where it only says COD for 10 years and nothing else. And I think they said it in the email where I think Jim was trying to get back to him like, hey, what about other titles? And then that's where it was like, well, we're not, we're just talking about COD now in this deal. And that's where I think that's where when they were kind of pushing back, and it was kind of getting to a point where, hey, well, the original deal's off the table because you didn't want that. So, and then it got to a point where it's just COD, and then they kind of were against it, and then pushed it all the way to where we are now. Well, now it seems like you're probably not getting a lot of these games. So, like, if the that'd be a huge one. That if they ever get World of Warcraft on console, to see that one's like, I get it because there's no reason to bring it up because it's only PC only, and there's no inclination that that's ever come to console. What if they did? We've seen how much it is, like, like crack for the people that played on PC, even casual people that got started playing it, and got, I'll hear, I don't know if it was Henry Cavill or some, just other, maybe even just like celebrities that were just like saying, hey, I almost missed a casting call because I was playing World of Warcraft when that dropped back on. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
and I'm sure thousands of other people. So if you give some casuals a taste of that, I'm sure they're going to be, and you throw it on Game Pass, like that could be a COD level size event. Maybe not that because it's not as casual friendly, but that could still be almost bigger than Diablo, or probably bigger. Well, I mean, it already is bigger than Diablo, but it's but on console that could be huge. So to see how that, some of that stuff is getting slipped under the radar in those trials of like, there's still a ton of IP that if they got it on console, and no one that's where the FTC went wrong, because all they focused on COD, and that's it. I'm like, you understand all these other games they make, right? So okay. But yeah, that'll be cool if they can get World of Warcraft, or I love the Warcraft 3 back on the PC. That was a great RTS, kind of like Halo Wars, but you also had like a hero that you'd build up, during your building up your troops, you level them up almost like kind of, and that's what kind of like led into the whole World of Warcraft. But yeah, that's what I'm hoping for, that they'll kind of branch those studios out, get that variety back that Activision had, and not just being Blizzard's whatever game they're working on in COD. So, because otherwise I don't see that there's that much value in that. They have the funds, just branch them out, expand them like you already did your other studios. You already built up, Ninja Theory, Undead Labs. So just if you need more support, just hire them. Like, okay, we need this amount of people continuously to get these COD games out. Cool, hire that. And then allow those studios that have the culture already built in, that were already, a few years ago, creating their own games, let them go back to doing that. And then, but I think that's just that'd be my perfect scenario for how that's going to benefit gamers and consumers. So, but yeah, hopefully that comes true.
No, all right.
Wait.
And now, what were you going to say?
No, you're good. I was saying.
Cool. So definitely a lot to look forward to and a lot to be hopeful for. So rounding this whole conversation out, Mr. GeneralMLD, you said you had a lot to say. I'm curious to hear it, good sir. What are you excited for? What are you hopeful for? Let's hear it.
All right. Well, first things first. I personally think the deal will close tomorrow, because Activision was delisted off NASDAQ, or at least it's going to be. So I think that's a pretty big sign.
It was removed from their top 100 companies list. It wasn't actually delisted.
Right. Okay. Well, I still think it's going to close tomorrow, but I guess we'll see. Ideally, I would like the CMA to kind of like allow it to close everywhere except for their territory, while they swiftly work out a deal and not penalize Microsoft for doing so. But yeah, we'll see. Because we're going to get an unprecedented Game Pass drop of a lot of AAA games. Like, we're talking 18 years of like Call of Duty. Now, I don't think all of them. Personally, the 360 games, those are a given. I also personally am hoping for the Xbox One games. because even though the PlayStation had contracts with those ones, I feel like a certain amount of time has passed and those don't really apply anymore. The Series X games, however, PS5 games, however, that might be another story. So we'll see about the current generation COD games if they show up or not. So, but then there's the other games like the Crash, the Spyros, Tony Hawk, Prototype, etc. It's going to be a pretty big drop, like with a lot of variety there. So, there's definitely some of those games that were on my backlog, just haven't got to it for one reason or another. I'm actually going to play some of them. Like I played the Crash Insane trilogy, but I didn't play Crash 4 yet. I'll play the Spyro trilogy. I'll play the Prototype games myself. So some pretty good games I'm looking forward to there. Now Jim Ryan, he signed the Call of Duty contract, but now apparently it only applies to Call of Duty. So the future now, I'm thinking like the chances are that smaller IP, their sequels, will be exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem. So another Crash game, Spyro game, Tony Hawk, everything I just said. If it's not Call of Duty, it might be exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem. So that bodes well for Xbox's growth as a brand because, end of the day, exclusive content, it is part of the industry. And I'm glad that they'll be able to get some exclusive content out of this going forward. Maybe not in the near future that we can see, but long term, I think we're going to get some exclusive properties that will elevate the Xbox brand. So I know like they make like Diablo games like once a decade, right? But we're thinking really long term here. But Diablo 5, that's probably going to be exclusive now. That will be huge. Just like how we're looking forward to, say, the next Elder Scrolls game that will be Xbox exclusive. Even though it's 5 years away, it's just something to think about in terms of long-term benefits to what we're going to do. I think we're going to, for backwards compatibility, I'm not expecting anything big. I'm expecting like guys, even though we closed the program, here's this like Activision batch that we're going to drop for like a one-time thing. Don't look too much into it. This is the one batch. There'll be nothing else. Is just some licensing issues that were lifted once we owned the company. So I think we'll get that. I hope we can play games like Singularity. So, and I hope they can bring that game back as well, even though I think it was a little bit niche in terms of sales back in the day. I do keep hearing nice things about it, so I would want to see that. Hexen, I played the original back when I was a kid. It was way too hard for me as a kid back then. I'm hoping that they can at least gauge the market, remaster it, clean it up a little bit, give it some achievements, and I'm there. I'm playing that. StarCraft, I was a huge StarCraft fan back in the day. Like my gamertag, Ghost MLD. The Ghost stems from the Terran Ghost unit. Like that was my faction. Like I love dropping nukes on people. It was great. One of my all-time favorite RTS games. They should hopefully continue that as well beyond StarCraft 2. And I think it's been rumored, but I would like to see new IP developed on the side from one of the Call of Duty developers, maybe Infinity Ward. They've always been my favorite in terms of the Call of Duty games that are made on rotation. So I hope to see something like that in the coming years. So maybe, don't make Call of Duty annualized. Make it like maybe some years it'll be annualized, but once in a while you'll take a break. So at least other games can be done and worked on, and those support devs can make like, the other IPs that are more dormant. That's my hope. But I think after some growing pains with the integration, I think these things will work itself out in the end. The executives, they're going to gauge like public opinion on social media to kind of prioritize what the people want to see. So it's going to work out. But I think we're going to get a lot of variety, and some dormant IP will be brought out. But I think the implication it's also worth knowing, though, the implications as a whole for Xbox, like it just goes without saying now. I mean, like PC now, Xbox is a powerhouse because now they own Windows Store and now Battle.net. And so that's pretty good. Now they have they inherited World of Warcraft alongside, say, Elder Scrolls Online. Call of Duty is huge on PC. I didn't even know that till this whole court case happened. So Xbox, they're really making good inroads on in the PC market, especially against PlayStation, which is kind of doing it at a snail's pace. They're kind of easing into it, whereas Xbox now, they kind of just leapfrogged the whole process. So it's good on them doing that. PC Game Pass users should spike, I would say, in the coming years. Let's see. They finally got a foothold in mobile. Candy Crush, COD Mobile, Hearthstone. Now they got a foot in the door. Hopefully they can get their own actual app store, dedicated app store, but that's going to take time. I'm not going to dwell too much on that. Cloud, I feel like Cloud's going to actually grow now a little faster than it would have been. And I think Xbox is pretty poised, like with their combined total of all their IP that they own now. So as the market will grow, I think Xbox will be ahead of it all, and they'll have like a pretty good advantage going forward. Now, of course, I'm a console gamer. Like, I'm looking at the console benefits. Now, I feel like there will be a benefit to this. The Xbox, Phil Spencer, they say mobile was the true prize. In the end, there will be console benefits because like things like COD marketing rights, console bundles, marketing rights for every top Activision Blizzard game. Now, this will lead to the console brand growing, which will, in the end, it'll mean more investment back into it, and it will ensure more consoles for generations to come. In the end, that is what matters. Like the people may not really see the point of, say, marketing rights or a Call of Duty exclusive bundle, but in the end, it does make more sales. And console is still an option. And so the bigger it is, the more gamers come our way, the more reinvestment you get. So it's spread out between PC, cloud, mobile, and console gets a fair share too. So that's what I'm kind of thinking of here. Game Pass subs will increase, I feel. It'll be like a perfect storm, like between the catalog dropping, Starfield, and like the perfect mix of like holiday marketing and Series X availability, Series S availability. But we touched on it briefly before. They're finally doing away with Xbox Live Gold and replacing it with Game Pass Core, which is mostly similar features. But the point is, like PlayStation Plus, the base tier is just multiplayer, right? It's a multiplayer paywall, but it all counts towards the grand total of PlayStation Plus subscribers. This way, Live Gold, purely Live Gold users will be now lumped into Game Pass numbers, which will give it a nice boost, which I think is, that's good. I mean, we all want Game Pass to grow. This is a kind of it's an artificial way of growing it, but growing it is all the same. I'm glad we're doing away with gold because it is a bit outdated. And the monthly gold games, they're going away. And so no more relentless mocking every time they drop these games that no one wants to play. And instead, they're replacing it with a set amount of games that from the Game Pass catalog that you could just enjoy. I think that's a much better alternative. And I'm sure they can change that or add it as they go. So that's good. Game Pass is going to be on the rise. So, and finally, again, I'm looking to the future here. Next generation. See, the Series X, we all know how the Series X launched. It was a bit light. 2022, a bit light. With now 30 plus developers, 2 major publishers, owning some of the most iconic IP in gaming, we will never get anything like those situations ever again. Like, future generations will be packed. Even if some are still multi-platform, like the value aspect alone, like it's all going to be uphill from here. And I'm really looking forward to that. But I digress. I'm looking forward in the near future to an amazing catalog being dropped onto us, a ton of Game Pass value being added as a Game Pass user, and some old IP brought back, hopefully. And just a lot of gaming and not enough time to do it all. Couldn't be happier.
Yes, definitely a lot to be excited for when it comes to Game Pass. And yes, to comment on what Mr. General MLD was talking about, which will lead us into our next conversation, is right before the show, we're talking like literally 15 minutes before the show, we got to hear Crusader completely have a jaw-dropping reaction live on the microphone because he was unaware But so yes, everybody, and you hearing it here at least first. I know only a couple other places are talking about it. But yes, let me pull up the image here. So Microsoft is actually sunsetting Xbox Live. No, that they're not turning off multiplayer. They're sunsetting the Xbox Live service. In other words, Xbox Live Gold. They are now going all in on Game Pass. You're going to have basically four different packages. You'll have your core package for $9.99 a month, which is essentially like what your online multiplayer paywall, but unlike the competition's online multiplayer paywall, you will get access to about 25 games. It's not going to be like Game Pass where you're going to have all these games going in and out of the service. It's just what they call like these core 25 games. We're talking games like Doom Eternal, Fable Anniversary, Fallout 4, Fallout 76, Forza Horizon 4, Gears. There's a list of them. Then you also have, which is the console base version of Game Pass for about $11, which we're all used to. PC would be about $10 a month, and then finally Game Pass Ultimate. But everything is being put under the Game Pass umbrella, and this all starts at about September 1st, from what it looks like. Even Mr. Crusader here said that there will probably be more of a comment on this from Xbox once they are done talking to the CMA here in the next day or so. This was on Wario64's Twitter feed, so shout out to him for kind of bringing it to our attention that this is going to happen. But this is where it's an exciting time for Game Pass all in all. This is one of the things I wanted to point out is like, so Game Pass, no matter what anybody wants to say about it, yes, there's some titles in there that aren't great. There's other titles in there that are absolutely spectacular. In my opinion, Game Pass has been delivering all year long. We saw it happen with Hi-Fi Rush on how it delivered. And now here we are in the halfway point of 2023, and it looks like it's just going to get better. Before we get to Capcom launching Exoprimal into Game Pass, Game Pass does have a very big future ahead of itself for at least 2023. We're going to get like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre coming in there, Lies of P, Payday 3. We're also going to see the Lamplighters League. That one is kind of on my radar because I'm just into games like that. But also there's a lot of first party stuff that's going to come in there. We're going to see Forza Motorsport. We're going to see of course, Starfield, but we're later on this month, we're going to see the Sea of Thieves Legend of the Monkey Island get dropped into game. Like if you don't own the game or buy the DLC, you're still able to go play Sea of Thieves on Game Pass and get access to the DLC. So there's a lot there for any Game Pass subscriber, and there's a lot to be excited about. Let's talk about you. Let's start with Eric Shockley here. Is there anything you're looking forward to for Game Pass later on in this year? Or, I mean, there's got to be something, but just to also touch on it, like I mentioned Exoprimal. I don't know if anybody here in the chat or in the show has tried Exoprimal. I played 7 rounds last night, and in my opinion, it's a fun game because I got to play with friends, but there's a big asterisk but to that. That game has some serious balancing issues, and there is a little bit of repetitiousness to it. The story is honestly not, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, the story is interesting, but the way the story is delivered is not exactly, I mean, it's very broken up, and the way the story is delivered is not exactly the way I want a story delivered to me. So Exoprimal, it is awesome to see that Capcom has also a great working relationship with Microsoft to launch a game in Game Pass. But honestly, that's where I was kind of hoping more for Exoprimal. I'm not saying that the game is broken or anything like that, but definitely, I don't know. I don't know. I guess I was looking for something more, but Eric Shockley, have you tried Exoprimal? Is there anything in Game Pass you're looking forward to other than first party? Give us some thoughts.
I have not tried it. I have seen some videos. I think Cog was showing it, like it's super cringe, but it's like not taking itself seriously at all. it kind of reminds me of, I haven't played any of it, but like kind of an Outriders feel or look to it. But I probably just don't have any time for, just because with Diablo it takes pretty much most of my time right now. Plus, there's some other stuff that looks a lot more interesting to me. I know I've heard people say Lies of P, or I've just seen like very few screenshots. But from looking at that, it kind of also has a almost looks like a Bloodborne meets BioShock feel to it. From what I've just like some of the brief stuff I've seen from it. So it looks pretty cool. Has a nice cool style. So I'm hopeful that has some good action combat. So I'd probably be down for that since that's supposed to drop here pretty soon, I think. And then obviously we have Starfield and Forza right behind it. So it's already pretty packed. On top of, we're probably going to get a dump like we've talked about before, just like they did with Bethesda. At least they'll drop in like, hey, here's this many Activision titles. And you're already seeing spikes. Whether or not, I don't know if it's because some people were saying it was Activision that fixed the servers, and some people were saying no, that that was Microsoft. But it's like they haven't signed anything yet, so like the deal's not officially done. So I don't know. Maybe
Shadowrun
Microsoft
got fixed too, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like it seems
Because people
like
were saying
Microsoft may
it
have
was it just on the
noticed something.
360 side.
Yeah, people are saying that it might have been a 360 issue because, like I said, Shadowrun was also reported to have been fixed.
Well, I mean, for like the a lot of the Call of Duty games, people are on like TikTok right now, like having having tears coming out of their eyes from nostalgia because they're like getting online, and the chat's still as bad as ever, and people are like going like saying the craziest stuff to each other, and people are like having tears run down their eyes or run down their face because they're so happy to be back in that world. But that's crazy if they're getting like population spikes on some of these old like I think it was Black Ops 1, someone posted earlier. I don't know if it's glitched on the population, but it was like at 100K. I don't know if that's accurate, because they were kind of all over the place, but that one was like way up. But yeah, it's kind of cool that they'll be able to probably just drop all the Call of Duties in there, which you probably get even more people going back and checking them out and playing. So I've seen them on sale, but that's why I've kind of held off on some of those games because I'm like, I haven't played them in ages, but I don't know if I'm going to buy them if they're going to be in Game Pass like in a couple of weeks, since they're, basically first party IP at this point. And they're just kind of obviously like annual games. So I don't know if I'm going to spend the money. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to Starfield. That's probably my most anticipated one. But yeah, seeing recent stuff on Lies of P, that looks pretty interesting. So I'd say those two, and then when Forza drops here in the next few months after. So, but otherwise, there's a ton of content, and we're probably gonna get some more stuff dropping in there. Hopefully, they drop in like. I hadn't picked up Tony Hawk's Pro Skater yet, but hopefully they just throw that in there. And I already had Secure on PC, but I've been waiting to double dip again on the console to just get like the Xbox achievements. So yeah, hopefully they just throw in those games. I'm sure they probably have the publishing rights still, because I know Xbox, even when you mentioned it earlier, Crusader, about Mass Effect. Not until like 2011, you could not play Mass Effect 1 on PS3, even though it was owned by EA.
EA finally re-released and published it on
and then they finally did, but it was you could only digitally download it.
Well, you could get the N7 edition as well, which was Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
They had an all-in-one by itself. Yeah, they had an all-in-one.
Yeah, but I think it just gave you like a digital code.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was just. I think they did some weird stuff like that with the Metal Gear Solid collection on PS3 too, because to get the first one, it wasn't on the disc. They gave you basically like the Vita PS3 cross buy code. Which is so weird when they do that stuff. But yeah, I'm sure we're gonna get a ton of content, and hopefully they give us some surprises, like we mentioned before, with some backwards compatible stuff. That'd be cool if we could get like that Wolverine game on backwards compatibility, or just some other cool games that some of the studios have dropped. Maybe we can get Marvel Alliance back. I just got lucky. It got delisted for a few years, and I just got lucky and found like a UK code for the for PS4 and downloaded it because I forgot that I got delisted, but I got lucky enough to find one of those codes. But it'd be awesome if they came back to just not being delisted, so they, or at least for Xbox, since I mean they would obviously, it would be more a licensing issue, I'm sure, but maybe that's because Activision didn't want to bother with it. So but that'd be cool since they made the first few. And who made the third one on Nintendo?
The one that just came out?
Is it? Yeah, I think a few years ago.
I want to say it was a
I
Square
don't know if
Enix
that was still
thing.
Activision or not, but
I think it was Square Enix.
oh, okay. Or the one on the Switch?
Yeah, give me a second.
Okay.
I'm looking up I'm looking it up right now. Does anyone know what the title of it was?
I think it was just Marvel Ultimate Alliance, wasn't it?
It was Ultimate Alliance 3 Black Order.
Yeah. That's right.
It was Team Ninja.
Really?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Nintendo published it.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, hopefully they will get some of that content. Well, hopefully they do what they did. It only took them a few days where they did a whole like Bethesda that like almost like showcase meeting, whatever they wanted to call that, where we like meet the studios or whatever.
Yeah,
so
that was like a week later.
Yeah, something like that. It was pretty soon after they finally announced that they closed the deal. So
yeah,
hopefully they'll have that, and then they'll kind of like lay the groundwork of like kind of like give the whole statement of like, obviously we have contractual obligations. Like obviously they just signed a contract with COD, but what I want Xbox gamers to know is that wherever Game Pass is, that's where Activision Blizzard games are going to be. Hopefully they just lay that out, because then it's like, okay, then you kind of know what to expect. So, and kind of like set the tone, because obviously we've seen this contract and they've kind of spilled the beans on that, because we thought they were going to keep it quiet for a bit, and then they finally told us that, hey, it's just COD and it's just for 10 years. Because some people were like, hey, maybe Sony was like, hey, we'll sign it, but you can't say when this deal's going to end, because then people are going to be looking at us like when it's like 2 or 3 years coming close and the PS6 is coming out or whatever, and they're like, oh, they're about to lose COD here in a couple of years. You better go get an Xbox instead. But I guess they didn't have any stipulation like that, so we know it ends in 10 years. Now, he obviously said under oath that they're going to bring it to the PlayStation 6, so, and that was under no contract of like a 10-year stipulation when they were asked under oath, like in the court. So I don't think they would try to, but a lot of pretty much all PlayStation fans right now on like Twitter are like saying, oh, well, they're going to take it away after 10 years. I'm like, no, that's not what's going to happen. Especially if they're going to they wouldn't do that to have then the FTC come in there and have a point, seeing like, see, they lied, and then have them like start divesting shit. So it's not worth it. They can just keep all the other stuff exclusive, because that's all they had to say under oath was COD. So, but yeah, hopefully get some news. But yeah, those are probably the ones I'm more excited about, Starfield and Liza P as of right now. So, but maybe I'll check out XL Primal if I see some people on my friends list on there. So maybe I'll give it a try.
Definitely, if you need some friends, hit me up for sure on that one. Yeah, I'm not saying it's a horrible game. I'm just saying it's definitely a lot funner with friends. And also, you're right. Definitely. I like how you use the word cringe. Like yeah.
At least you have the looking for group. That's the best thing. One of the best things that Xbox done is it's how it's like all integrated. I get people shit on the UI all the time, but I'm like, That's some next gen shit. I don't have to go to a third party app. I can literally just click on the game I'm on, and it literally has a list of people looking for whether you're playing Diablo or whatever. Exactly. Oh, you're doing this right now? Cool. Join my thing.
So
That shit's
that's
sick.
one of the things with Exoprimal is you need to have a Capcom account to play the game. A lot of people are very upset about that. To even play the game, you got to set up a Capcom account. And I had no problem doing it, but one person I chat with on Twitter said that the Capcom server was like broken at the time, and he wasn't even able to create an account, so he wasn't even able to play the game. And also, like, this is where it is not PvE. Like, even if you turn off PvP, like if you go to the little clicker and like I only want to play a PvE match. So in the game, they have the ability for you to control a human controlled dinosaur no matter what. And even in a PvE match, if the other team receives a dominator or a devastator, whatever the hell it's called, they can actually call down a dinosaur on your team that is essentially controlled by another human being, and they can just wreck your team if you're unprepared for it. And that's where, like, so no matter what, it is either it's like PvP no matter what. And that was just something I wasn't prepared for, because I'm not knocking PvP, but I mean, like, that game, even on the PvE setting, is uber competitive because you are still competing against another team that has the ability to invade your game. So
It's surprising that they went this route, because people were like, hey, this is even the critics of, like, you know, people were saying that they've played it, that saying it's not a good game, but it's like, but it's really well made for the most part. So why didn't you just make Dino Crisis?
I know that's the funny part for being like pretty
It's like,
much
oh, this is really well
online
made, but it's not good.
No, you're right. It would have been great to see Dino Crisis for sure, and you could see the inklings from Dino Crisis on this, because they're, you know, like
this after Dino Crisis, where people have that, like, hey, I finally beat Dino Crisis remake or whatever you want to call it, and I'm itching for more dinosaur stuff. Then release this.
I know,
But,
right? Or have a multiplayer with Dino Crisis that revolves around
yeah,
that.
but,
You know,
yeah,
that's a
this
whole
would be
nother
like
argument.
the Resident Evil Reverse stuff that they just attached to. Yeah, just attach this to it, like you did that. There you go.
So before we move on to the next panel member, thank you again to Mr. Carlos Alvarado for another $1.99 super chat. Yes, wow, World of Warcraft on console would be an absolute game killer / game changer for me. I have never played World of Warcraft. I have been part of ESO for years now, and I really do not know what I would do if I was able to play World of Warcraft on console. And would that get me off ESO? That would definitely be a very large competition for me, because I do not have any desire to sit upright in a chair playing on my little tiny 27-inch monitor. I'd rather play on my 4K television laying back on my couch. So it's one of the reasons why I never got into PC. So moving on to our next panel member, Mr. GeneralMLD. How do you feel about, like, right now with like what's going on with Game Pass? Have you tried Exoprimal? Are you looking forward to future releases? We all know that we love and crave first-party studio titles that are coming out, but there's also those included third-party studio titles that also just really make us feel like this service just offers more than the breadth of what Xbox can offer us. Tell me, what are you excited for when it comes to the rest of 2023?
Oh yeah, I think Game Pass has a lot to offer in the second half. Like, I had a great first half, like Atomic Heart, Ghostwire Tokyo, Hi-Fi Rush. Those stood out to me on Game Pass, and I beat some backlog big Game Pass games like Persona 5 Royal, High on Life, which came out like late last year. So a lot of good stuff there. Now, going forward, there's a lot to look forward to here. I'm looking forward to Sea of Stars. That's like it's an interesting story with that game. It's like a retro, like 16 bits, like RPG turn-based. Now, it initially didn't have an Xbox version for it, but there's enough outcry, and eventually, not only is it coming to Xbox, but Xbox got the Game Pass rights to it. So Fantastic. It's coming out like this end of August. So I'll probably be playing that alongside Starfield. I got to divide my time with that. But in terms of, to make it worse, Lies of P is coming out in September as well. So September, that area is going to be very, very, very busy with me having to divide my time accordingly. And I said it before, Starfield. That game I'm going to be playing, I think, well into next year. That's the big one, obviously. Forza Motorsport. Now, I'm a Horizon guy, but I feel like this is the game that could finally get me into the Motorsport series. Like from what I'm seeing, the game looks gorgeous. The physics overhaul. Because I am a car guy at heart. Like I do like arcade racing games, but this just might be the game to make me really care to like race like in a proper sim environment. So there's that. But third party wise, Persona 5 Tactica or Tactics, I think that I'm coming off Persona 5. Give me more of that because it plays a lot like I'd say Advance Wars, if people are familiar with that, where you select a unit and it tells you the tiles that you can move, and you do that, and then you attack, and that's your turn kind of thing. So that looks like a good fun time. And although it's not confirmed, I'm hoping that Warhammer Darktide gets a console release this year. I know it released on PC, and they had to like pull back the console release because they had to fix some stuff on the PC version. I'm hoping that could make the end of the year kind of thing. So those are the big ones for me, I feel like. So I think what? Lies of P, Sea of Stars, Starfield, Forza, Persona 5, Warhammer Darktide, like that's a lot of Game Pass right there in terms of like these are full games. So they've outdone themselves this year, I say. Never mind all the Call of Duty games that I'm going to be playing. I actually want to play every single campaign of Call of Duty as well. And these are 6-hour games, so I feel like I can blast through all the COD games in like what, 2 to 3 months. But I played a few, but many I haven't. So I'm just going to marathon that. Plus, I said it before, the Prototype series, Spiral, Crash 4. There's a lot of Game Pass coming up for me. Couldn't be happier. But in terms of Exoprimal, though, I'm going to wait and see on that one. Because it is a little suspicious that there's no Metacritic reviews yet. And you said that there's some balance issues. I feel like this is a wait and see kind of game. So for now, I'm going to pass on Exoprimal.
Totally understandable. There's also one game because you even mentioned Darktide or that one game that's coming from like the Warhammer publishers. We also like one of the games that is actually still on the agenda for release this holiday season, but I mean, like, I'm not going to fault them if they don't, but Stalker 2 is still on the agenda for being released in Game Pass this year. And yeah, that'd be kind of like an amazing holiday to find out that developer was able to, kind of like survive everything that's been going on for them over in the Ukraine and able to get that game out this year. But even if they don't, I still won't fault them. But that is yet another potential Game Pass release still up in limbo, and that is yet to be seen.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, but yeah, given what's going
their
on,
situation,
I'm not holding them to it. It's is what it is. But I feel like first half of 2024, that's what my gut's telling me for Stalker 2.
So moving on to our final panel member, Crusader. I know you get a lot of gaming in and love playing a different range of titles. Again, what are you excited for when it comes to Game Pass's offerings for the rest of 2023? Because, I mean, there is still a lot to be delivered in the service this year.
Yeah, I mean, Starfield's the biggest thing for me. I'm gonna pre-order the early access for it. I haven't done it yet. I typically don't do that kind of stuff until sooner, just in case there's some kind of promo.
So are you buying the upgrade or buying the game?
The upgrade.
Okay.
I'm gonna buy the upgrade, and then I'm gonna end up purchasing the game outright on PC when a complete edition exists on Steam, so that I can mod it. But like the modding community won't be out for won't be in its prime for a long time. So I'm not as how do I say this? I am gonna purchase it. I'm not in a rush to outright buy the game. Looking at the list, I I have some friends who are super excited for the Persona 5 Tactica game. I probably won't play it, but Stalker 2 is a huge one that I'm excited for. Aura History Untold should be coming out this year, and I'm super excited for that. Now that's like that's a global publishing game, but like I really want to play that.
I feel like they should have set a date by now, though.
So they've been doing a ton of like alpha insider ring testing for the game where you can play portions of it.
Okay.
It's under people who are in it are under NDA. But I'm very curious to see when that was originally supposed to release in the first half of the year. And they haven't actually publicly. I mean, there's been new updates given on it in the alpha rings, but they haven't publicly said any information. And like I said, it's under NDA, so like people who know about it can't talk about it.
Okay.
Also, the Humankind is supposed to be launching on console, which is another 4X strategy game. I played it on PC quite a bit. I liked it. Sega, Sega's made it. I really liked it. It's supposed to be. There's no. It's technically not a 2023 title, but it is a port of an existing game. So like, I'm kind of hopeful that will also come to console sooner rather than later. I'm also interested to check out Neon White because I've heard a lot of things about Neon White. And it's supposed to be coming this year. But I'm probably not going to play Exoprimal. It's not really a thing for me.
No, definitely that's where Exoprimal was one of those games I was really on the fence about. And that's one of the things I love about Game Pass is, that gives you a chance to really find out if something is worth your while and worth purchasing. Let's face it, outside of first party studio games, well, even then we saw with Quantum Break, there is still circumstances that can remove a first party studio game out of Game Pass. But when we're talking like third party studio games, those aren't a given that they'll always be there, which means that, if it appears in Game Pass and it appeals to you, go check it out while you have the chance so you know whether or not you really want to truly own that game. Otherwise, you can just go buy something else that sparks your interest if it's not your cup of tea. And that's where Exoprimal, somebody said it in the chat, the game does not have long legs. And that's where I'm kind of probably with it, that I do feel that this is going to be one of those games that, I'm not saying very quickly, but, I just don't see them keeping the servers on as long as some of these games that have like a serious cult following for the game. I feel like this is a game that could potentially get replaced very quickly by another title that's a multiplayer that's just like another flavor of the month, if that makes sense. So moving on to our final subject, we'll make it a quick one as we're kind of getting towards the end of the show here. And that is where obviously this is more like to kind of like pay tribute. No, the guy, he's still around, but it is time for him to retire. And in my opinion, this has been like a household staple for me since I got my original Xbox 360 and being able to click on that little tile on This Week in Xbox. And in my opinion, it's going to be hard pressed to find somebody to fill his clean white gloves, and that is Mr. Larry Herb, also known as Major Nelson. He announced this week that he is going to be stepping down from his role over at Xbox. And honestly, it's going to open doors for potentially someone else to potentially become another big face of Xbox. Who's it going to be? But also it just really kind of again shows us that times are changing in the gaming industry as a whole. Like, we're seeing Major Nelson retire. We're seeing Xbox acquire Activision. It is a very big changing time. So we'll kick off this last subject with Mr. Crusader. Your thoughts? Mr. Larry Herb is retiring from Xbox, man. It just goes to show that no matter how much we all want it to, time will just not stand still.
Yeah, I wish him the best. I used to watch a lot of that stuff on the Xbox dashboard when they'd have like the weekly roundups I think you had a name. I can't remember what they're called.
This Week in Xbox.
Yeah, This
that's
Week
all
in
I
Xbox,
remember. Yeah, it was
that's it.
always titled just This Week in Xbox.
Yeah, I always really did enjoy those a whole lot. And I'm gonna miss the. I wonder if they'll keep doing it. The Free Code Fridays. On Twitter, where you would give away the games. Because like there's nothing quite like that. He was a community manager, unlike most community managers in gaming. He was like very different. And I really liked his style of just engagement, like how he would go out and like engage with the communities and like at events and things like that, and always down to take pictures and just always friendly. And he just always seemed like he always wanted to talk to like anyone and everyone. So,
Yeah, no, I like always whenever you'd see like E3, XO events, and anything else that was more of a public event, you'd always see Larry Erb there, and just definitely doing what he does best, and that's honestly getting people excited for what the brand has to offer. And also, I mean, like, it was a great time to watch his podcast. I know his podcast is going to go on on hiatus for a little while, and it does plan to come back. But I remember one episode I watched, he was like wearing one of the shirts that Xbox had just came out. And there was like a patch of like metal that was on it to where you could actually like stick, like it was like a magnetic surface that you could stick your Elite 2 paddles and stuff like that and upgrades to it. So that way you could take your paddles off and on and stick them. And they had like the shirt had a little pouch on it. He was like totally overhyping this like accessorized shirt for the Elite 2 controller. And he just honestly had a great sense of humor about what he brought to the Xbox brand. Mr. Eric Shockley, where were you at, and what are your thoughts on Major Nelson retiring from the brand?
Yeah, it's sad to see him go. With he's been basically a staple of the community. Since it wasn't. I think he started before the 360. I couldn't remember, but I didn't really notice him, or I don't know if he was out in front because he didn't have like the whole dashboard that could play videos and stuff that you'd get from like indie from Xbox Arcade around in that 360 time. Then I listened to his podcast and Gamertag radio way back. So just some of those to get his like background on games, and but he's been a great part of the community, delivering the message. I did love his infamous interview with was it Angry Joe? when he asked Angry Joe, like, do you know what's inside? Angry Joe was right with his questioning, like, well, why can't you just turn on the Xbox One if the Kinect's not connected to it, or whatever it was? And he asked him, well, do you know how it's made or whatever? But other than that infamous interview, but he's been a great part of the community. But yeah, I guess he won't. I haven't been out to any of the fan fest before. Definitely be cool to go on these years, but I guess obviously he wouldn't be there at this time. So, but it's been cool to just have him there with the game announcements, or I guess if anything, it doesn't seem like his need there is there anymore. Otherwise, pretty much you would just get his tweets for like, hey, here's the games on sale. So since the whole COVID lockdown, there's not much shows that go on where you're actually presenting or you're actually out there like E3. They don't really, obviously that's going to be put in the past now. So there's not much need for them probably too in that sense. But since doesn't seem a lot of the stuff's like lockdown, and there's not so much like trade show stuff going on where you actually need somebody to engage with the community like that on that level. So, but yeah, it's hopefully gets to do some cool stuff, and things like him and like Reggie Fils-Aimé, that like people like that have kind of like kind of carried the torch or got, you know, the community, even when times were like low, you know, just to kind of keep that same energy. So it was definitely cool having them around the community for sure.
No, definitely. I'm gonna definitely miss every time we would get a console drop and he would be white gloving that thing and just showing it off for the world to see.
Oh,
And I mean, the white gloves were so iconic. I wonder if whoever tries to do that is going to try to carry on that legacy, or if that is going to be Major Nelson's legacy is the white glove treatment. And rounding out this final conversation, let's get to Mr. General MLD. What do you think, sir? You know, I mean, we've all pretty much grown up for a long time now watching Major Nelson hype the brand to us and keep us up to date on current events with the Xbox brand. And now that chapter is coming to a close with him stepping down.
Yeah, like some people, you think that they're going to be in that job until they're retired, or you don't really think, you don't really consider someone so that's so closely tied to a brand can just move on, kind of thing. But you know, it happens. That's life, and it makes you really think about everything he did over the years. How he was like the face of Xbox in many events. E3 mostly comes to mind. Yeah, always had a smile. Like he was always a very he was a really good community manager, kind of thing. Like, he always brought this forward. This a very down to earth kind of face and personality, and he was to me, he was like the human side of Xbox, kind of thing, you know. So yeah, it's just sad to see the guy go, but I wish him all the best.
Yeah, definitely. It's sad to see, but as we all know, that time is just something that cannot be stopped, and definitely things change and people just move on. I mean, like I think for Larry's thing, he was really wanting to spend a lot more time with his family and just kind of pursue other life ambitions. And, you know, here we are. It's definitely a new chapter for Xbox. We're going to get possibly a new face in the community to help kind of push the brand in the direction that Mr. Larry Herb pushed it. We've got Activision, the deal finally being finalized. There is a lot of stuff that is that is changing in the Xbox brand. And like we touched on, we've got Xbox Live Gold being sunsetted, and now everything's going to Game Pass. So it's going to be a different year come 2024, a different whole new Xbox brand. And I mean, it's just fun having these conversations, thinking about what if and what could potentially be for us all. Definitely to stay in touch with all those conversations, you know, always tune in here with TXR with this amazing group of individuals. And we're going to start rounding out the podcast with our outros, and we're going to start with Mr. Crusader. Thank you for being here tonight, good sir. Tell everybody where we can find you at.
Find me at Crusader3456 on Twitter and at Crusader_3456 on Threads. A great show tonight. Had a lot of fun actually getting to talk about like cool things and not court cases. It's great. Unfortunately.
If you want, I could pull up some stuff from the FTC's publications on their website, and we could start going over theory.
I'd rather stub my toe.
All right. So moving on to Mr. Eric Shockley. Awesome show tonight. Had a lot of great input. Please, sir, tell us where we can find you at.
Yeah, as always, you can find me at ShockNero on Twitter, EZShock on Xbox Live. But yeah, good show tonight. Hopefully we'll get some news tomorrow on the close, and hopefully not have this drag out a few more weeks. And then hopefully some cool showcase announcements, hopefully, or at least just games that are coming to the platform or like coming to Game Pass. But yeah, good show tonight, and see you later.
All right. And finally, Mr. General MLD, awesome show tonight. Really enjoyed hearing what you had to see. Everything you had to say and all your input. Please, sir, please tell us where we can find you at.
Oh yeah, great show tonight. You guys can find me at MLD Ghost on Twitter, Gamertag Ghost MLD, and let's let's see what. Hopefully, we get some good news tomorrow, if not a little bit after.
I know, right? So that leaves me. I am, of course, your temporary host of tonight's show, Centurion 1307. If you're interested in finding me and the content I put out, please find me on YouTube at Centurion 1307. You can also locate me on Twitter, Xbox Live, other social media platforms at Centurion 1307. All my social media links are actually up in the banner on my Twitter. And also you can find me here every Sunday night on TXR and also on Gaming Beyond the Box right before this show. Thank you to everybody who turned out tonight. Really enjoy having you here. Please go down in the description of this show. Check out all the social media platforms and other streaming platforms that we're on and give us a listen there. And of course, please follow our amazing host, Mr. Invader Gaming. He does an awesome job here and help keeping the lights on and the show running smoothly. Again, shout out to him. Hope he's having fun. Look forward to him coming back. And also hope you guys are ready for another great show next week and look forward to seeing you all here. So until then, please stay safe out there and thank you for joining us tonight.